All right. Let's see if I pass out. So there's this beautiful and iconic geographic feature called the Flatirons. If you live or work in the city of Boulder, you can see it from anywhere in the city. Back in March of 2018, I started working in Boulder, and I could see it every day I went to work. I joined a big tech company for the first time to work on a flagship project, the kind of thing that moves the stock price, that they announce at their big customer conference that kind of makes those business news articles. And our challenge was to improve the UX for over 60 million users. This was an enterprise app where 100 products were shuffled together into a single Frankenstein of a user experience. And back in 2018, conversational UI was still trending. I think we call it a little bit differently now. So we set out to build a chat assistant to help save our users with some of the things that were hard to do in our app. Our mission was to make the most common tasks in our app possible in a few brief chat messages using our AI assistant. Our team would deliver a UI component that would exist everywhere, all the time, and every page of our app. Floating in the bottom right corner of our screen, taking up one of 4 navigation icons in our mobile app. It would be ubiquitous. And after 2 years of building and shipping our little chat bubble, we had succeeded in almost every measure. Over 60 million users, no major issues or bugs, that was important. And if some things are really easy to, it made some things really easy to do very quickly, like taking time off in just a couple quick chat messages. We did it. But there was a hidden failure behind the scenes. For such a pivotal element of our UI and our user experience, we had shipped it without using a very critical resource. We weren't using our design system. While our product had won, our design system had lost. My team did not consult it for guidance. We did not rely on its design components in Figma. And our front end ignored its tokens and React components. Our UI design for our product, it was good, but at what cost? If our design system was to evolve in the future, we wouldn't change with it. And instead of building a bridge to a more cohesive experience across our giant application, we potentially made the problem much worse, since our product lived on every view, on every page. So, after seeing ours fail, I want to tell you what makes a design system win. So I was the senior UI developer on our product, and I thought, why wasn't I using our design system? It was the beginning of the pandemic when I joined a Zoom call for the design system monthly demo. It had been on my calendar for a couple years now, and it was maybe the second time I was attending it. And I liked what I was seeing. Their work was really good, but I struggled with finding a clear way to connect their work with mine. And I was friends with the design system too, with their team. They had open sourced their design system a year earlier in 2019, and I was really excited about that. Meanwhile, I had gotten our company to sponsor our first JavaScript conference, which they were excited to see. We both loved and believed in sharing our work with the broader community, and in giving back and in sharing what we love. We shared those values, and we connected over drinks and happy hour and a couple more things. The year before, in 2019, a very good friend of mine was looking for a design system to work on. He needed a change. And I recommended him to the manager of the design team. He would immediately become their most senior developer and their strongest technical leader in the entire design organization. And that's saying a lot. They had really good people already. And a year later, shortly before this Zoom call for the monthly demo that I was joining, I would recommend another rising star who I'd met from the meetup scene. And he would eventually become the second staff level, along with my first friend, on the team leading the design system organization. I had played a major role in shaping this team. I had friends on it. I really liked what they could do, and I knew they were doing great work. And the team itself was already really good. The person who found it was a designer, developer, unicorn, as I like to call them, and he could do both things, and he had done an amazing job building this out. They had a team of designers, a team of engineers, and they were phenomenal. And it only got better as I got more familiar with it. But as the pandemic began, I also needed a change for myself. I was experiencing the longest period of burnout in my entire career, and it was only getting worse with being forced to work from home and wondering what was happening in the world. I thought about trying a different kind of work. I'd spoken at some conferences before, and I was curious about trying developer relations. And then I looked at the design system problem, and I took a chance on this wild idea I had one day. I ended up taking parental leave in May, and the following month, I asked the design system team manager, Lynn, if he would jump on a call with me. And we talked about being parents, and we talked about everything going on. He was that kind of person that you could just talk to. And then I brought up my experience of not using their design system. And I wanted to change things, not just for my current product team, but for the entire UI community at my company, which was something like 100 product teams, by the way. And I wondered what would happen if we got people excited about the work they were doing. I also told him how I was burned out, and he would be taking a real risk if he hired me. I'd also never worked in developer relations, and I knew front end. I'd been working in it for a while, but I found quickly that I did not really know design systems and how deep that rabbit hole goes. Well, despite my warnings, he was thrilled with the idea. And 4 months later, they created a role just for me, and I joined the team as their first design system developer advocate. Now, before continuing my story any further, I need to repeat something. This team really was exceptional. They were already doing an amazing job with what they were shipping and what they were delivering and how they were communicating it. But this was a very large software company. It was 12,000 employees when I joined this team, and it would only grow from there. So my experience as a non-consumer, as someone who was not using their design system, wasn't really their fault, but I think a symptom of a common challenge across many design systems at different companies, any company that's growing really. This is also a common challenge outside of design systems, in platform engineering teams, and really any time you produce code or designs that you're shipping to other developers or other designers, it can be a battle to win them over as consumers and to earn their adoption. It is extremely likely that if you haven't already, you will encounter this kind of challenge in your own career, whether it's design systems or something else. Getting the attention of busy product developers and designers is hard. Keeping their attention is hard. It's already hard enough building a great design system that has good code and design, but good luck doing that and winning that attention game. When I started, I really had no idea what I was doing. At least it felt that way. But I had some gut feelings about what problems I need to solve. I thought about past me, and past me was the problem the present me needed to figure out. I didn't use the design system, even though I knew about it. I was building a product that should be using it, that would have benefited from it, but I didn't really see how without having to do the work. And I was busy building that product and shipping it to all those users and making sure nothing broke. I didn't have time to go look for something that I wasn't sure how it would help me. And there were other product teams out there in our company that were using the design system. Some were really happy, and some were, this is great, this is helping us. But there were all too many teams like my own that I was coming from that were apathetic. They didn't know, and they didn't care. I love this quote from American actor Steve Martin. "Be so good, they can't ignore you." But what makes a design system that good that it's impossible to ignore? Our design and our code were both very good as you would hope, and we would deliver our first major release while I was on the team in May of 2021, and I truly believed what we were doing was excellent, truly good. Something else needed to be different, and we needed to change. So this didn't start with me, actually. Our team was already doing this when I joined, and I got to see it happen more and more as we added members to the team, including myself. And we were showing up in every UI conversation that we could find, whether it was a UI discussion for this team or this org, or a Slack channel to talk about accessibility, or a Slack channel for platform engineering, or this other component library, which was initially a competitor, which eventually became a good friend of ours. If someone asked about React or web fundamentals or TypeScript, someone was there to answer questions from our team. It wasn't even about supporting the design system. We had UI experts, so we were showing up wherever we were needed and helping people out. This wasn't about telling people to use the design system. It was about being helpful. Being helpful builds trust. Building trust builds reputation. Now, those are two really good things to have. And of course, if someone had a design system question, we were on that as soon as someone saw it. And often, 2 or more developers from our team, sometimes our whole team would be on a Slack thread, sharing different perspectives, giving different information and insight, and just really showing up for any of our users that wanted help. I got to see the questions grow as we did this in our Slack channel, with more people joining it each month. One thing we believed was if someone was using our design system, that meant there was, if someone had a problem using our design system, that meant there was something we could improve. Maybe our docs weren't clear enough. We were missing code examples, maybe. Maybe we can improve our usage guidance to explain when to use this component and when another one was better to refer to. Maybe our component API wasn't flexible enough and did not support what they needed. Sometimes it was simply user error, but we always greeted them with, "I'm sorry, that should work better for you. Let's figure this out together." Before long, our generous sharing of expertise, coupled with an ever-friendly and gentle attitude, meant that our Slack channel started to fill with questions every day, multiple times a day. We actually talked about how to make sure somebody was always there to respond. And still, we'd get questions not about our design system, but we did not care. If people were asking for help, we would make sure we provided it. They were our users. When our 5th major version came out in May of 2021, I would get to give my first release demo. We had significant changes to our component API. We bet the house on compound components. We would make our components not rigid and fixed, but flexible and adaptable. We didn't expect everyone to understand this change, though. On the surface, it looked like one line of HTML or JSX turning into 30. It looks like I have to type more code. Is this really going to help me? It looks like I need to understand a few more things about HTML in the browser that I might not already know. But we were exposing more of our inner workings of our components. Taking advantage of this meant a paradigm shift for our developer community. I also really like teaching, so we created a Trojan horse. During our demo, we announced our first workshop, an introduction to compound components. Its focus was on React patterns and how access to the underlying DOM elements in our compound component API was a more powerful way to build products. I didn't say it was about the design system, the workshop. It was really about teaching you React and teaching you how to use this pattern. But of course, we would layer in our components as examples from the design system. The true objective and measure of this workshop's success was to see if we could level up developers across the company and help them be better at shipping their products, helping them be better front-end developers. And we had so many signups because of how we pitched this and how we framed it. You're going to learn. You're going to become a better developer from this, that we had to give it 2 different times to break up the group. And it reached a staggering percentage of all our product teams. I would give it again the following year in the spring, and then less than a year later, with 3 new members of our team, we unveiled a new workshop and taught the fundamentals of responsive design with our latest components. Between these workshops, we kept the conversation going in 2 ways. Every week, we hosted office hours. At first, we tried signups, and that works for some folks that want to schedule the FaceTime and have something in their calendar, and that's good to try. Good to do if you like it, and it works for you. Most often, though, for us, we were on a walk-in basis. I would post in our Slack channel that office hours had started, and I'd make a corny dad joke or suggest we chat about the latest news in React or front end, just to kind of give people something to think about and be interested about. Sometimes it was just me hosting it, but often a couple more folks from the team would join, and we would just end up hanging out and asking each other questions. Then our consumers would join, and it would sometimes get so busy that I was creating Zoom breakout rooms so that Nicholas could answer that question, and Alan can answer that one, and Reza could handle this person. After a while, we developed a group of regulars, and folks would join just to hang out on our office hour Zoom. It felt like a club, one that welcomed anyone and everyone. If they didn't have questions, we'd ask them, what are you working on? What problems are you solving? What are you trying to do with your product? We'd get to know what they were doing. Instead of having to go find their problems, they were bringing them to us, and we could get a better understanding of what was going on across the company, so we could go back to the design system and know what problems we needed to prioritize. And indeed, we would go back and know that we needed to move things up in our releases. The other way that we kept up with everyone was release demos. We started initially, we were on a monthly schedule with about a minor release every demo, but we saw 2 problems occur. The first was we had a few months where we didn't have that much to talk about, maybe 1 or 2 things. And this is partly because we developed a strategy of, we tried to ship some major things along the way, some new features, but there were some things that were good to sort of chunk up and strategically batch for a major release. That way we could build a little bit of hype and excitement around what was coming out in May or coming out in October. And also created a little carrot to get people to tune in and know that if they upgrade to this, they're going to get that new shiny object that they want to use. So that kind of made it a little sparser on the minor releases, and there wasn't much to talk about. But there's another problem that the company was growing, and it was, I think I was employee 10,000 when I joined, and 2.5 years later on the design system, it would reach, I think, 17 or 18,000. It grew a lot. And when a company gets really big, there's unfortunately more meetings and things that are pulling at you and taking up, distracting you from what you want to do. So we could see that meeting fatigue really start to set in, and the attendance had been dipping. So we dialed it back to every 6 months to match our release schedule. And we dialed it up to be more polished and prepared. We also created a predictable release schedule that we mapped out months in advance. Major releases would arrive 6 months apart. The May release would intentionally have more breaking changes. We tried to make that the release of the year, And then in the fall release, we'd still have some breaking changes. There'd still be some new things, but we'd intentionally be very thoughtful and deliberate that that was not to be too impactful and too onerous on upgrading. This built more trust with our consumers. We showed that we were predictable and gave them something that they could fit into their roadmap planning so that they knew how to fit upgrading our library or when to maybe adopt it or bring in certain components. They knew when those things were coming, and so they could plan for that better. So, what did this do for our adoption? Well, I was tracking demo attendance and Slack statistics to track our community engagement and how many people were around and listening to us. Demo attendance bounced up as we moved to less frequent release demos for the major releases. The Slack channel members grew, and it was by far the most popular channel for UI developers at the company. And there were several. We crossed 300 members, then 400, and 500, and eventually 600 members. Now, this is hard to measure, but the culture of our channel, it was incredible. When your team that's hosting this is so welcoming and supportive of everyone that comes in, never giving anyone a hard time or saying, oh, that's the problem you need to go figure out, or here, go read the docs. No, we were giving people the information they needed and jumping on calls and teaching them as they needed it. Well, everyone else in the community, they absorbed that attitude. Meanwhile, my friend Alan was measuring component usage and what version of our library was installed by each product month by month. Not only did we see our adoption grow and accelerate, but Alan led the effort to reach out to product teams directly to make sure that they knew how we could help them with what they wanted to ship and help them do it faster using our design system. And also find out why some projects were years behind on their library versions. It's one thing to have adoption, it's another to have adoption on the latest version and not somebody that has something 3 years old. Well, dependencies. It turns out that there was a significant lag from when we released a major version and when the majority of teams would actually update their dependency and take advantage of the latest and greatest. Early on in my tenure, we had a brainstorm session about what should go into that V5 release that we were releasing in spring of 2021 when I had that first major release demo, including the compound components. And I knew how tedious it was to manually update hundreds of lines of code in a repo. We had, I think, about 80 repos using our dependency. Dependency management was already painful. It still is, I think, no matter how you go about it. And with that change to compound components, these were pretty big changes. And that meant expanding one line often into 20 or 30. So I asked, what if we shipped code mods in V5? We could automate most of the breaking changes. A code mod automatically rewrites the code, and in this case, from our previous release, from V4 to V5. So it would use the new syntax in the product code. It could significantly reduce developer effort in applying any upgrade. Our team immediately went for it, jumped all in, started writing them, and this would become a staple of every major release from then on out. Breaking changes? Yeah. Thousands of lines of code, maybe tens of thousands of lines of code impacted across the company. And yeah. But you can apply this in minutes? Oh yeah, that is definitely the way to do it. Okay, quick timeout. I'm giving a workshop tomorrow on how to write your own code mods. It may be full, but we added 10 more people earlier this week, 10 more seats. So check tomorrow. If a spot opens up, it's at 9 a.m. Thanks. Okay, so we didn't just ship code mods, but there was something else that made the upgrade process significantly more doable. We shipped rich upgrade guides. And to be fair, we'd been doing this, but I got to see how much attention we were paying to it, and they continue to improve with every release. Initially, they were called migration guides, which I suggested a subtle change. Migration sounded like moving from one tool to another, and that can be a bit scary, and I've done that. I have spent months of my life migrating from A to B, something old to React, and so on. But this gave an impression it was a pretty dramatic change, so I suggested let's call it an upgrade guide. Subtle thing for that perceived effort. Just want to dial that down a little bit. And we clearly spelled out in every guide what components were impacted. These are the components that are part of this upgrade. These have changes, these are new, and these might be going away, or they're deprecated. We described how this would affect design and visual presentation, because this was both code and design. And we noted if there was a code mod, which could almost always be done, and so we did it. And that happened for almost everything. And then in our release demos, we wouldn't just showcase our new components, but walk through the impact of every change, which also included things that would be deprecated and removed, and what the developers and the designers would need to do next to adapt their product. I remember an office hour session where someone joined to ask about updating their library from 4 versions back. We did a screen share. I opened up our upgrade guide. I went through it, and I ran our code mods. And 10 minutes later, they said, okay, hold up. I want to end the call. I want to go try the other 2 myself, and I'll let you know how it goes. They had so much confidence from that brief 10 minutes to just seeing that you just run a script, look at the guide, see, oh, maybe we make this change here, that they wanted to do a dependency upgrade themselves. They were excited about this. And then about 20 or 30 minutes later, I heard back from them on Slack. It was all done. They'd moved 4 major versions up in well under an hour. It's hard to upgrade a dependency when you don't know the scope it entails. We still see this when upgrading our different things. But having code mods and a clear upgrade guide greatly simplifies this to the smallest effort possible. All right, so remember our Slack channel? It tripled in size over 2.5 years. It was really popular. It was the place where you could reach everybody. And somebody saw the need to reach everybody. There was somebody on our platform engineering team that managed our React dependency, which was shared across all our products. And they, without any warning, decided to, as a guest on our channel, come in and make a big announcement. And they @channeled everybody to ping our entire community. There was going to be a required version upgrade. React 16 was going away. You could not use it. You had to use React 17. And it was happening in a month. This left teams scrambling with no free time to handle it. They already had their existing product work, their existing sprint going on. They might not be able to start this for a couple of weeks with their current plans. And they don't know how much, they don't even know what's happening in the React 17 upgrade and how much is going to change. And I think that was a fairly impactful one. We did have the biggest UI channel, and yeah, mentioning everybody was definitely going to be effective. It definitely got a lot of people talking, and I think there was over 100 replies on that Slack thread. But we never used @mentions, by the way. We never tried to say, hey, everyone, look at us. You have to pay attention to this message. We already saw that in all the other Slack messages, and we didn't want to be part of that noise. We felt that when we made announcements, they needed to be concise. They needed to share the most interesting parts in the initial message. And we would say if there was a lot to mention, there's more details in the thread, or we're going to talk about this in our next demo, or we're going to have a special call for that. We considered everyone's time and attention to be precious. So we made every message to our community well-crafted and thoughtful. I can't tell you, I feel like half my time was editing messages. And I wasn't the only one. We had a documentation engineer that did that full time. We had my product manager was amazing at that. There was at least 3 of us, and at some point all of us was editing those little details to make sure it was really, really easy to read and really clear, left no ambiguity. But when that React dependency upgrade, and when that dependency grenade went off, we jumped on it. We believed it really would have consequential impact in all of our consumers, who we cared about, even if we weren't the cause. Some teams were quite upset, and they had their own milestones and deadlines established. This was a major surprise that they did not want to hear. I remember joining a call to help one of those teams, and I invited the relevant people from the platform engineering group, but they didn't make it. And for 30 minutes, I got to hear how upset this product team was, and I listened. I listened to what they were experiencing. I paid attention to what their concerns were. I think I already knew what to expect, but it was good to hear firsthand. What were they thinking about? How did they think about this? And what did they want to happen next? And this is coming from a very different place of support for what was happening here and what our team was doing. We actually were very flexible in what versions we supported for React and other dependencies that were shared like this. I think at the time we continued to support React 16. We supported React 17 already. And I think very shortly after, we supported React 18 and supported 3 major versions of React at one time. We wanted to be flexible, and we did have the liberty of being able to do that with ease. And there was a good reason for the platform engineering team to say, hey, we shouldn't be on a 2-year-old version of React, or maybe it was 3 by then. They were coming from a good place. It was just the delivery that was challenging. Well, I focused on where we were, and listened to the team that was pretty upset. And at some point, they figured out where we really stood in all of this. The conversation immediately shifted, and our reputation wasn't just repaired, but they left the call with even more respect for us. Over this time, we established many friends through office hours, demos, and jumping on calls like that, where people were needing help. And over this time, we would hear from new people that we'd never met before, didn't know what they were doing, but they would tell us that somebody else that we did know had told them about what we were doing. Keep in mind, we were never mandated for product teams to use. We had to earn our place in their tech stack. And earn it we did. But what really got us there couldn't be the effort of a single developer advocate or even our entire team. It was our friends that were advocating for us. Behind their own closed doors, around the world, in Canada, the West Coast of the US, in Ireland where we had a big office, and different offices around Europe, we heard about it quite a lot actually. And I think it's safe to guess that it was happening even more where we weren't hearing about it. And at times we saw it for ourselves. We saw it in other Slack channels that weren't the design system channel. We saw it in our design system channel. We saw folks helping out in different ways in the community. I facilitated dozens of open source contributions, often first-time contributors. My goal, by the way, was always to get them to not just contribute once, but to want to contribute again and then again. And questions in our channel were getting answered by members of the community where our team didn't need to step in and say anything. That's really scaling the effort, where you can just step back and see the community sort of just run with it. And that's a wonderful place to get to. In May of 2023, I gave my last release demo. It was themed around boy bands from the late 90s. We had a playlist with NSYNC and Boyzone. As I said, the Irish presence we had was significant. And we dressed up. We made it a party. I gave my last workshop just a couple days later and completed several other projects that month to send things off. If there's anything I hope you'll gather from this talk, I hope you'll see it's not the design or the code that will make the design system. Those things are important. They are critical, and I wish they were enough. But what will make the difference isn't how well we implement or even deliver these things. It takes something else beyond technical excellence. That is what I hope we strive for. I hope we build communities that are warm and helpful, much like the one we have here at this conference, I want to say. I hope we build tools that help other developers, that save them time, as we did with Code Mods. I hope we make friends where we share our time and energy with generously. I always had so many things to do, and as did developers on our team and designers. We always took the time to help somebody else out and made that the priority whenever it came up. I hope we have fun, and I hope we make it a party at every opportunity. I believe that's what makes a design system. I believe that's what makes a design system win. I now work on developer tools full-time at Toolspace, a consultancy I started earlier this year. I'm here if you ever want to talk about design systems. It's one of my favorite subjects. It continues to be, along with improving the developer experience with dev tools and other things. This was a story about design systems, but I hope you can see ways to apply these ideas to other areas of your work. I want to thank Lynn for giving me a chance on the team, Justin for becoming my manager during a very difficult time, Alan and Nicholas for teaching me so much, Manny for his hugs when I needed them, Zoe for the best release demo design we ever had, and there are many others I want to thank. Thank you. Last, I want to thank you. I hope this helps you in your career.